So I went for a walk with my dog to a place that I didn't visit for the past 20 years or so. It's a place where I spent my entire childhood at my grandparents' summer house, and I stumbled upon a building that I forgot even existed, and it inspired me for this project, and the colors of it is what inspired me the most. So, going into this terrain project, I went raw. I didn't have any plan on what I wanted to do, but I started off with cutting out some black styrofoam. My cuts are bad. I can't cut a straight line for some bizarre reasons, but hey, we are all flawed. So, I just, as I said, rough cuts of the shape that I wanted the building to be. It's not perfect, but I'm going to show you some tricks and tips on how to hide or mask your mistakes. And yeah, here I'm cutting out the main shape of the building, and then the smaller doorway, so to speak. I glued the pieces with white PVA glue instead of super glue or hot glue, and that's my personal preference. It's for it gives me more possibilities to play around with the shapes and fix mistakes if needed, while super glue or hot glue will not give me that variety. Now I glued the entire piece on black styrofoam. That will be the base for this terrain project, and then I added roof tiles to both pieces, and as you can see here I have a lot of cracks that are visible, and that's because of my bad cutting methods, and we're going to cover it with popsicle sticks. Now you can use cardboard or black styrofoam for that, but since I had a lot of popsicle sticks laying around, I decided to use them. First of all, I just height down the size that I need, started cutting them in shape, and then gluing them onto the piece with white PVA glue again. Now, while gluing this all on, you can see a lot of visible lines, cracks, where the popsicle sticks don't exactly match the cuts. But don't worry, as I said previously, I'm going to show you a trick how to cover that all up. Now I had this Sprite cans laying out from a previous project that I abandoned, and I decided to use it here. So I'm just eyed down the general location of where I wanted the cans to be placed. Now I want to add windows to this piece, and for that I'm going to use some very long matchsticks. So I'm just going to cut out the top and then cut them into pieces and shapes the same way as we did with popsicle sticks, and then glue them onto the spots with white PVA glue again. For the back I decided to go with a very long window, and while in the front I wanted a shorter one, but that's because we're going to place a can to the right of the building. Now, when it's fully dried, we have our windows. So basically the basic shape of the building is now ready, and as you can see I added some cardboard to cover up some open areas on the doorway, and now we're going to decorate the building with some extra bits and pieces that you have laying around. You always should keep them because that's what gives your terrain projects some character and life. I have this door from a Necromunda terrain piece. I just cut out the sides and shaped a little bit on the back for a flat area, and we're going to glue it on using super glue this time. Then I decided to build up a doorway for the door using black foam, and again just measured it out, cut it, and glue it with white PVA glue. Now back to the bits and pieces. I added some bolters to act like a turret of sorts. Then I decided where I want the stairs to be, glued it on as well with super glue, and then proceeded to add bits and pieces like this control panel to the doorway. Then add some random bits and pieces to the cans to give it some character as well. And I mean, it's very important to keep these random bits and pieces laying around, because you never know what you can stumble upon when making terrain, and if you just open your big box and find some random pieces that might inspire you to make a new terrain piece. And if some pieces are falling out, just hit them up with super glue so they will be stuck in the place. Now we have to cover up the top part of the can. I just cut out a perfect circle from cardboard and just glued it right on the top of the can. I decided to add another level to this piece. I just cut out a square from a styrofoam and thought to myself that it will look better, the can on top of it, than without it. So just glue it on with white PVA glue and then put the can on top glued with super glue. Now I decided to add also some stairs. Just cut out some black styrofoam and glued them on top of each other with super glue, and then just stuck it right on the base. Now this is turning out quite nice. I already like the general look of it, but we have to push it even further now. And we have to push it with adding some extra texture on the roof and on the floor. Now I have this yellow roll of some industrial thingy. I just shaped it accordingly to the roof and trimmed some excess parts off. But the bad part is that whenever you cut this thing, it disintegrates in smaller pieces and they always are stuck in your skin, and that gives you a very bad discomfort. Now to glue it on, I mixed up some white PVA glue with water, approximately 90 to 10%, 90 being the white PVA glue and 10% being the water, and that's just for more stickiness. I did the same for the stairs. I did the same for the blue styrofoam. Just think where you want it to be. It will add some other texture dimension to the base, and it looks quite nice when it's painted. So again, I heat it up with some white PVA glue mixture, and if some pieces are not sticking, just force them in with your brush. Just push it into the foam and hold it for a couple of seconds, and I guarantee you it will stick on. But I have no idea how this yellow thing is called. I just found it in my craft store and just bought it. I use the same method for the windows, because I think if there will be some kind of fence in the windows, this will be a perfect look for it. And if some window pieces are broken, it just adds character to your entire piece, because you can imagine that someone just threw a rock and it broke it. Now, I had these straws from McDonald's laying around, and I decided to use them, so I cut them into shapes and started to glue them on where I thought that it would be logical for them to be, right, like here next to the canister can. Just shape them up and glue them on with some super glue, but keeping in mind that they're very slippery texture, so I had to add more glue to the sides so it will penetrate in all the cracks and areas and just glue it completely. Then I also cut out some smaller pieces for pipes and glue them on the corner of the buildings. Now you can leave the base as it is, but I wanted it to be texture, so I started to trim it off, just cutting it into shape, my preferred shape, and not being precise. I was being quite rough, and if some pieces didn't want to cut, I just torn them away, and that will add for more texture in the future when we're going to add sand to it. Now, here is a part that I decided I wanted to add, and that being some tiles. I cut them out from cardboard, just random square-shaped tiles, and I started to glue them on, chaotically, just throwing them on. This was a very fun part to work on. Just having fun with the terrain piece. I added some on the sides of the base as well, and near the canisters. Basically thinking to myself, if someone is working in this facility or this building, they need some dirty tiles to walk on. Some squares are much bigger than the others, but that doesn't matter, because I don't think that anyone from this facility cares about measurements. Now for the base, first of all I'm going to add some sand, and then add some white PVA glue and make this paste sort of mixture. Now you want it to be like a wet sand mix, but not too wet and not too dry. If the texture is too dry, add more PVA glue, and vice versa. If it's too wet, add more sand. Keep mixing it generously. Now, when the paste is done, just start applying it in the corners and on the sides of the base, heating the walls, heating the stairs, heating basically everything that you can, but don't overdo it. This is my favorite part in terrain building, because this adds so much more character to the actual environment where the building is situated, and more texture to the base itself. Just again, with the popsicle stick, I'm just going to spread it all around the building, heating all the corners, or basically all the sides, just going ham on it. Also be sure to heat some of the tiles. Again, we want a very dirty look here. We don't want any we don't want it to look clean. when it's still wet, you can tap it with your finger a little bit just to press it into the base. After it's completely dry, keep in mind it has to be completely dry to be rock solid. Give it 12 to 24 hours. If some small pieces break off, don't worry, it will going to make it even that much better. Now I again mixed some white PVA glue with water, this time very diluted, and applied it on the base, and that will be the parts where we're going to sprinkle some sand. I added a little bit of the mix on the tiles as well, just to make it look like wind has blown the sand on the top of the tiles, but don't go too crazy because we don't want to lose all the tiles under the sand completely. We want it to actually be seen. And when applying the white PVA glue mixture, don't be careful and don't apply it on top of the paste that we applied previously, because that will just make it lose all the texture. And with using these two different techniques, we're adding two different textures to the base, and that will look so good when it's painted. Now let it again dry completely for 24 hours. That's like how I like to dry it for how long. And yeah, this is how it looks. It looks very good. You can see the two different textures on the base. Now we're going to add some moss and fungus. I have this bag of very cheap flock, and again I started to apply the white PVA glue mixture every corner. Basically, just keep in mind envision where fungus could grow and moss could grow. In this particular piece, I envision that pipes might add some heat and moisture. So I picked out all the tubes, all the pipes, and I tried to pick out all the corners and some areas on the base as well. And then I just went and started sprinkling on the top of the mixture that we applied, being very generous with it. We do apply it before painting because I think that when you paint moss, it looks so much better than when you just sprinkle in a finished painted terrain piece. Because it just will look very wrong. I again press it with a finger just for it to stuck in, and if some pieces fall out, don't be afraid, just grab them up, pick them up and sprinkle it again. Let it dry completely for 24 hours more, and this is what you end up with. As you can see, I hit the corners as well, as I said previously. Now with the little trick, we're going to use some bandages here, and with the mixture of white PVA glue and water, we're going to apply on the entire piece, hiding all your mistakes, all your cracks, all your uneven pieces, and some damages. Just again going ham. You can't use it on every single piece that you're working on, but in this particular piece it works wonders. Again, it's just normal bandages, just cut into pieces, lay it on top of the piece, and then covered with white PVA glue mixture. As you can see here, I'm applying it on the stairs as well, in the corners, and later on I'm going to apply it on the roof and on some cans. When applying this bandages, keep in mind that one layer of it will not be enough. Just add several layers if needed, and you can also apply them so that it looks like they're hanging off the building, and that will add again so much more character to your piece and so much more life. And it's a very fun part of this terrain building, because I don't see this technique being used that often, and I just enjoy it. For some reason it's very comfortable doing that. we have to try this completely, and I mean completely. Doesn't matter how long it would take, when it's dry it will be like rock solid. It will be definitely rock solid, and this already looks good. Now I'm going to base coat it, and here I'm going to mix some black acrylic paint with some white PVA glue. There's a little bit of water on the side to dilute the mixture, and then I'm just going to apply it all over the piece. I prefer this method instead of spray painting it, because white PVA glue in the mixture will serve as a protective layer from some damages. And if you try to spray paint it, parts of black foam protruding from the paper or blue styrofoam will melt. So I prefer this to any spray paint. And this is also my favorite part of the terrain building, because once it's built it looks like a mishmash of different trash pieces, but when it's all base coated it look very cohesive and make it seem like you bought it from a store or something. Again, being very generous with the paint, just applying it all over the piece, not leaving a single area unpainted. And as you can see here, it's fully covered, and this is the part that I like the most. It's very cohesive, it looks very good, it's like a very singular piece. To paint it, and for building I'm going to use this army green. As I said previously, the color of the abandoned building is what inspired me to do this terrain piece, and so I decided to copy the color. I'm going to stipple on the paint, leaving a lot of black protruding. That's my preferred method of stippling. You want every color to come through from after every stippling highlight. So I'm going to hit all the walls, all the pipes at this point, but afterwards I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to fix something that I'm doing right here. Again, at the moment I'm just hitting up all the walls, stippling it generously, but keeping in mind that I want some of the black to protrude. While making this tutorial, I was very uncomfortable with the camera position, and I tried my best to get in focus at what I was doing, and this was very uncomfortable for my arms position, and I was very far away from the piece, so I didn't have the best angle to see what I was doing. Now I added a little bit of gray to the first color, and I'm going to add a second layer of stippling highlight. Again, keeping in mind that now you don't only want the black to come through, you also want the first layer to be visible. So with this layer you want to add a little bit less than the first one, but as you can see here, you already see the difference. You do see the lighter green coming through. Now for the cans, I went ahead with brown and again stippled it on, but being very generous this time. And yeah, you're going to see a lot of stippling techniques in this particular tutorial, because that's how I like to paint my buildings. When stippling the brown, I tried to be careful not to hit the green because I didn't want to ruin it. So I would advise to use a smaller brush on the areas that are closer to the walls. But yeah, and but this is the moment where I made a mistake. I took this red and mixed it with a little bit with the brown. I was going for a rust effect, as I did on my previous terrain pieces, but this red was not the correct tone, so I messed it up. It turned out too red, so I'm going to go back afterwards and fix it. But at the moment I still decided to include this into this tutorial, so to show you that you can fix any mistakes that you make. Now, while looking at it, I already noticed that I didn't like the red color, so I took black again, and instead of painting the black on, I decided to stipple it on, and to make it the red and the brown protrude a little bit to be visible underneath the black. This also added that much more layer to the cans, and the amount of paint that we already stippled on, it adds texture, which we want because rust does have texture. I went again with the brown, the first layer that was stippled on, and stippled it again, but this time I used a smaller brush for it to look better, because the smaller brush you use for stippling, the better the effect will be. It's hard to explain, you have to try it on your own and see what effect you like better. This is the part that I went back to fix. I didn't like that the pipes were green, so I stippled a little bit of brown onto them, but I decided to keep just a little bit of green to make it look that the pipes were painted previously, but then they started to rust and all the rust started protruding, like you see in actual abandoned buildings. I also decided to hit the wall pipes and some terrain, some bits and pieces that we glued previously, and at this point I regretted it a little bit, but the end result, it looked brilliant. Then I decided to add a little bit of gray to the main walls, just a little bit with a very small brush. It added again more color variation to the building and more variety and character. But I didn't go too crazy, it was just random stipples here and there, and yeah, it was fun again and relaxing. Now I went with some dumb wool, it's what I use for all my rust. And instead of that previous awful red tone, I decided to stipple this bamboo onto the cans with using the smallest stippling brush that I had. Again, this is the part that I tried to explain, that the smaller the brush is, the better the control of your rust effect is. So you can see you can control the brush better of where the rust should be. Instead of going with a bigger brush, you're going to hit bigger areas, but it's not that controlled. Now this already looks like rust, and then I use the same red brownish color and heated up all the pipes again and all the bits and pieces. Now with very vibrant orange, I decided to stipple very gently on all the spots where the red was, and this is the part that brings all the rust to life. This very vibrant orange, just don't go too crazy with it. It has to be very light stipple. For the roof, I stippled on some black, but I didn't stipple it across all the piece. This black that I'm using here is a different tone. It has more brown and gray in it. So the color variation was very noticeable, and that's what I wanted to keep. With this step, I was trying to be very careful because I didn't want to hit all the paint that we already applied. For the base, I went with the brown, just painted it on. At this point, you will run into a problem where the brown will hit your walls, but that's not actually a problem. That's even better for you because it's dirt. Dirt always hits your walls. That's how nature is again. And I think painting bases is my least favorite part in any painting or terrain projects that I do. Now going back to the roof, I stippled on some silver. Again, not everywhere, trying to hit some spots, but leaving some of the black protruding through. And at this point, I decided to hit just a little bit of silver on the pipes and on the cans. Because it was too rusty, and this silver just brought it out, gave it that much life, that much more life. Now I picked out all the tiles with black, but I deliberately left all the sanded areas brown because we want to dry brush it later on. But at that moment I picked it out with black and then stippled on some gray. And I had decided on this color because I wanted this terrain piece to tie in to my previous industrial project where the buildings are gray. And I use the same stippling methods there as well. Then I stippled a lighter tone of gray, where I basically just mixed previous gray with white, and I repeated it 2 times, so all the tiles had 3 highlights basically. then I went back with some brown. And dry brushed it basically on the tiles. I wanted to make them look dirty, that they were stepped on, so I just hit them up with brown. Somewhere I did hit them up quite generously, and the other pieces I tried not to touch that much, but each tile had got its share of dry brush. Now back to the roof. I decided at this point that I wanted to add rust as well, so I just copied the previous techniques with browns, with the red and with the orange, and just hit it up on the roof, on the stairs, on basically all the flat areas where we glued on that yellow texture-y thingy. Now I decided to pick out all the doors, the bolters and the control panels on this piece with the black, because I wanted to look different from all the other, from the green. It was too green for me, and so I picked it out, including the windows. Again, being very careful not to touch the green, because it will be hard to fix this mistake at this point of the painting. Then with some administrative gray, I dry brushed all the picked out pieces, including the windows, but what you will not see in this tutorial is that afterwards I went back and just picked out some corners with silver, especially in the windows. I think it was only the windows, and silver would just add a little bit of shine, and it will look like it's actual glass in there. You can use some plastic, but I didn't in this project. And here I'm also adding silver on the doors, basically to pick out some icons and symbols, and then I washed it with Moon oil. And I also decided to add rust here, again to tie it up with my previous industrial set, and again using the same techniques, brown, red and orange. Then I went back to the bandages finally, and I painted it with black, because at first I want them to be black and then dry brush gray, but I thought that will be too simple, and yeah, I'm just basically, you can look at it like I'm just base coating them right now before the next color will be applied. Again, being very careful not to hit the green walls or the rust, being very careful and controlling my brush at this point. Now this is where I decided that I want it to be camouflaged. So I went with the same green that we used for the first layer of the building, and I dry brushed it very heavily on the bandages everywhere. I hit every single spot, trying not to touch any previous work that we already did on this project. Then I went with the second highlight and I mixed the same green, but previously for the stippling we used gray as a second color, but this time I used white. And the reason why I use white here is because I wanted to differentiate the two tones. I don't want them to be the same, I wanted them to be different. So adding white, it will be more of a toxic green color than of the army green. And this is what will separate the walls from the bandages. For my last highlight, I used pure gray here, and I just dry brushed all the reason areas, basically the corners and whatnot. And there will be one more step that is missing from this tutorial because my camera turned off, but I'm going to wash some parts a little with the Greebling sepia. Now for the base, I'm going to highlight it with a mixture of the same brown and gray again, and this will give this very muddy, sort of muddy dirt color, and it's perfect for any industrial bases. When dry brushing this, I tried to hit some of the walls and tiles to make it look like it's actual dirt. With this step, with this dry brushing step, you can be dirty, you can get away with that, because that's how dirt is. Again, things get dirty. For the second highlight dry brush, I added even more gray to the mixture, and I tried to dry brush all the resin areas, like the paste mixture that we applied previously. And this is why we did the paste mixture. With this dry brush, it will just elevate it that much more than the just sand. And this is the part where I went crazy. I just took some gray and I decided to pick out all the small stones that was in the sand mixture, and believe me when I say it, it's worth it, because when you look closely on your base, you will see them, and that will add so much more life to your terrain projects. And then we're going to take some sepia and we're going to apply it on the moss that we glued previously, and we're also going to apply it near the pipes and on the base and onto the walls. So basically what we're doing, we're going to make moisture stain marks, and with our finger we can spread it out and so basically blend it in. This is very important to use your finger here, because you're going to make some blendings. And just trying to envision where some moss and fungus would grow and hit those places with the sepia wash. I also added a little bit under the windows, and again with my finger I blended in to make a stain mark, which looks very natural. Then I'm using these Russian paints. They look like pigments when they're dry, but for them to have this pigment effect, you have to dilute them with water very heavily. And as you can see, when I applied them on the base, I went back with pure water and just blended into the base, and this is what will make our moss look like moss. And this is the final result, guys. I'm very happy with how this turned out. It looks like that building that I showed you in the beginning of the video. The green matches it very good, perfectly in my opinion. The green bandages, they could be black, it's up to your preference. I wanted to be camouflaged, and you saw that for this terrain project we used a lot of garbage basically that is laying around and our shelves, boxes, whatnot. And yeah, with the pigment Russian paints and with the Griffin sepia washes, we added so much of actually corrosion, fungus, dirt to the base to the buildings, and it just gives life to the project. And we can do it with so many different shapes, and as you can see here, I was also working on a second piece that would go along with that. And yeah, just using your imagination. I personally don't like to plan my terrain projects ahead. I want to go into them with a clear head and let my imagination drive me and just show me what to do, where to paint that particular paint or apply that wash. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very interesting to make this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Stay safe, guys, and see you in the next one.